right, our next one's setting a low salary. Forming an S corp and then making your salary really low to save on, certainly Medicare taxes for most docs. Sometimes people set the salary so low they're actually saving on Social Security taxes. What are your thoughts on this strategy? How do you know when somebody's taking it too far?
When they're not paying themselves a reasonable salary. That's when that is. Yeah, with everybody that I work with, when it comes to the S corps and even the C corps, I want to make sure that they are paying themselves a reasonable amount. And this can there's different methods, but my favorite is the many hats method, basically. And so the problem is that people just assume like, hey, like I'm earning X, and so gross revenue, I'm only going to pay myself this much to save on that Social Security and Medicare. But this is one area that the IRS loves to nab people on. I mean, if this is probably, I would say, the number one thing that is audited on S corps, and so you need to really take a look at what your rate is. If you were to hire yourself off the street, and you can then take a blended rate, though, of the different jobs that you do in your business. So, yes, you're a physician, but you are also your travel agent. You're also your admin. You're also doing your bookkeeping. Depending upon if you're doing it all yourself or if you have employees, et cetera. And then you got to allocate your time between. So if you're working 40 hours a week, and that's the standard, by the way, for a reasonable comp. They don't look at, if you're a physician, you work 80 hours, like the comp is still based off of a 40-hour week. And so you take your 40 hours, and if only 60% of your time is actually doing work as a physician, then we only want to take that higher rate for that 60% of the time. So taking a blended rate is great, but you have to substantiate it. You have to look at, the different jobs that you're doing, find an average rate. And you can look at census data, you can do research, go look on, salary.com or all these other websites, to determine what would be reasonable for you. And then take that blended rate. So then that way it does help to lower your salary. But where people try to get cheeky and just do it too low. I mean, the IRS is, might take a few years for them to find it, but they'll nab you for it real fast. And then you're going to owe interest and penalties and payroll tax penalties and interest, which are far worse than income tax penalties. You don't want to screw around with payroll. Like, you got to make sure you're doing it properly. Otherwise, it can really bite you in the butt in the end.
Yeah. So, a good example of a doc who's abusing this. Let's say it's an ophthalmologist who's actually practicing full time and claims a salary of 50 grand. That's going to be a big red flag, right?
Exactly. Yeah. The IRS has these statistics. And so, if they see that, hey, this is really low, like they might, need to inquire, like, hey, why was it so low? Like, did you have to take medical leave or, something else happening? There are some legitimate reasons for taking a lower salary from, 1 year or more. But again, if you can't substantiate it, then, they're going to go and get you with those interest and penalties.
Yeah. A couple of rules of thumb that I've heard and probably even used over the years. Tell me what you think of them. The first one is, especially for a doc, don't set your salary below the Social Security wage limit. That way, you're only saving Medicare taxes, and it doesn't look quite as abusive to the IRS. And the other one is, pay yourself at least 50% of what the business is making as salary. Do you think those rules are worth anything? You think it's really about getting into the details and just figuring out what a reasonable salary is, or is there some value to those rules of thumb?
The IRS has not provided any guidance or has any set formula for figuring out what's considered reasonable comp. I never ever go based off of percentages. That's because I've seen where, when I've run reasonable compensation analysis for my clients, I've even had like ophthalmologists, for example, that will, their salary is below, the Social Security wage amount. And so it just depends on what other jobs you're doing and, and everything. And so I think it is worth the time to investigate, like I said, all the jobs that you're doing and find the proper hourly amount and then take the average between all of them, or it's the blended rate, sorry, between all of them. And it's something that you only really have to do maybe every 2 to 3 years, or if there's like a big change event in your business, or you retire, or slow down, or maybe only start to work 3 or 4 days a week. So I've never seen any merit to those standard amounts.
The hosts of The White Coat Investor are not licensed accountants, attorneys, or financial advisors. This podcast is for your entertainment and information only. It should not be considered professional or personalized financial advice. You should consult the appropriate professional for specific advice relating to your situation.